Hello everyone, today I am here to talk about The Beast of the Stapletons by James Lovegrove. This is a continuation of The Hound of the Baskervilles by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, which is probably the best known Sherlock Holmes story. I think it is also consistently one of the best reviewed Sherlock Holmes stories, a favorite among fans, myself included. I am a huge fan of The Hound of the Baskervilles. And I've been kind of on a Sherlock Holmes kick recently, and so I decided that I was gonna read this book. And to be honest, this is like my third time recording this. The first time the audio didn't record. The second time I definitely recorded it, and I don't know if it didn't save or I accidentally deleted it, but I could not find the file. So third time's the charm. Also, it might have been a sign from the universe to not re-record this because I did not like this book. And there are going to be a lot of spoilers because it's kind of necessary to explain the characters and why I don't think this is a good Sherlock Holmes adaptation. And it may have been better if it wasn't a continuation of The Hound of the Baskervilles. So, that being said, here we go into why I think The Beast of the Stapletons is not a good continuation of The Hound of the Baskervilles, and it mostly has to do with characters. I think the thing that really annoys me the most about any adaptation or continuation of any sort of like classical literature or well-known piece of work is when they really mess up the characters. They don't understand motivations or they completely flip them around, and that happened like multiple times throughout this book. Drove me absolutely insane. So, The Hound of the Baskervilles, quick rundown, is about a gigantic hound that is haunting the Baskerville family, and multiple Baskervilles have died under suspicious circumstances, and Henry Baskerville is the last surviving member of the Baskerville family. He comes to Baskerville Hall, and the hound is after him. Sherlock and Watson solve the case. Cool. It was a giant hound. This man named Jack Stapleton was the guy who had taken care of this giant hound, had, for example, put phosphorus on him to make him glow at night and things like that, to make him look really demonic. And then there is his wife, Beryl Stapleton, who he was using for his own gains. And yes, at the end of The Hound of the Baskervilles, like, Henry has developed a relationship with Beryl Stapleton. So that kind of plays into this story as well. I think the one thing that I actually really liked about this was that Henry Baskerville and Beryl Stapleton are no longer together, which I think actually really works well, because even though they might have grown close in The Hound of the Baskervilles, I feel like a relationship between them would never have worked out, mostly because she did help her husband, who was trying to kill Henry, and even as much as they liked each other, I feel like, and maybe this is just me, some people are better than me. Some people could totally work it out. I feel like this wedge of, hey, your husband almost murdered me, would always just be there in the background of the relationship. So I'm totally okay. I like that they weren't together and that he's just with some, he's had a son. There's another woman. She has since passed away, also under mysterious circumstances. And so Henry thinks this curse is still there. But every character, I feel like, just wasn't themselves. So Watson hears about this, and he decides he's not going to go and help Henry because of the PTSD that the Hound of the Baskervilles case gave him, which, to be fair, I've been bitten by dogs 4 times, and so I'm very wary of dogs, especially when they're off leash, even if their owners are like, oh no, they're totally nice, no worries, LOL. So I get the PTSD aspect of that. But also, John and Henry grew so close in The Hound of the Baskervilles that I could not imagine John not going to help his friend. Like, if it was some random stranger, yes, maybe. But Henry is his friend. He would 100% go and help him and be there for him. It was just so out of character for Watson. So Sherlock goes to go investigate, and I get what James Lovegrove is trying to do. In the actual Hound of the Baskervilles, a lot of it is from the point of view of Watson, and Holmes is not there for half of the book. And then in this one, it's the reverse. Holmes is there, Watson isn't there. Okay, I get that. But once again, it's just so out of character for John. It's from the get-go, I was annoyed by this book. because of the characters just not acting how I think they would based on how they act in like every story that Sir Arthur Conan Doyle wrote, right? Watson is always there for Holmes, and he's always there for his friends. He would not just be like, no, I'm too scared, but like, meh. Like, he would still show up. I feel like he is that kind of man. So then it turns out there's a giant moth that's haunting the Baskervilles now, okay? So it's not a hound, it's a moth, which I'm really sorry, but I like laughed out loud. It was so absurd. It's just, to me, not scary. A giant moth. First of all, moths are pretty delicate to begin with. If there was like a giant moth haunting you, you could just like break its wings in half, right? Even if it was a big one, okay? Like birds are really delicate and have really delicate bones, even though they can be huge, right? A moth even has more, even more delicate wings. It's just like papery fabric. You could just like pluck it off or just rip it, like anything to defend yourself against a giant moth. Okay, but a giant hound is actually terrifying, and a giant hound could kill you. A giant moth? Like, what? Okay. And then to me, it was so very obvious how this giant moth was being done, right? So like I said, in the original Hound of the Baskervilles, it's like, okay, it's a hound. Like, how are they making the eyes glow? How are they making it look like it has this ethereal flame around it? Oh, it's phosphorus. Okay, like there was a bit of mystery there, right? I read giant moth, I automatically knew it's just a kite. It's just a giant kite. That's what it is. And that's what it was. I was like, oh, there's no mystery to this whatsoever. And we're going to head back to the characters now. Because at the end of the book, you learn that Beryl Stapleton, after she didn't marry Henry Baskerville, her life went really downhill. And so she decided to blame him and killed his wife, kidnapped his son, is just like an absolutely horrible person now, which I don't think she would be, to be honest. So once again, I'm like, yes, like tragedy and horrible things can make you change, but I feel like she has become a mad woman, and I never saw that whatsoever in The Hound of the Baskervilles, right? Like in The Hound of the Baskervilles, when Henry's being haunted, she's trying to help him. And even though she's already had this hard life, it's just like, once again, so out of character. And then you learn that James Mortimer, who was the doctor in the very first, like in The Hound of the Baskervilles, in the original version, he's the one who first comes to Sherlock Holmes and is like, hey, I don't know what to do about this. There's this family curse and this new Baskerville is coming, blah, blah, blah. Come and help me. And he's like, helps throughout the whole story. His name is Dr. James Mortimer. In this version, it turns out James Mortimer has paired up with Beryl Stapleton to get back at Sherlock Holmes because he is James Moriarty's younger brother. And I was like, just, what? Like, that is just so stupid. I'm sorry, but literally just stupid. We don't need to bring Moriarty into every Sherlock Holmes adaptation ever made, unless you're doing like a full series thing, then yes, put him in there. But he doesn't need to randomly be in a continuation of The Hound of the Baskervilles that's already crap and doesn't follow like character motivations or who these people are in the original story, and now you're just randomly popping Moriarty in there. Like, what the heck? I was just so upset. There is no reason to do that. I feel like once again, James Mortimer was like a good dude. He cared about his friends. He was trying to help. He was a little bit quirky, but that's his like thing, right? But there's no way he's an evil kidnapper who's trying to get back at Sherlock Holmes because he's James Moriarty's brother. What? Or Dr. Moriarty. His name is James, right? His name's also James. It was just dumb. Like, there was no reason to put that in there. It drives me crazy. He could have just fallen in love with Beryl and, like, gone along on her whole revenge or whatever, but instead they literally, at the end, like, the last 2 pages are like, oh yeah, and he's Moriarty's brother. Like, it drove me crazy. And I felt like it was that for, like, every character they mentioned that was in the original Hound of the Baskervilles. Like, the Barrymores just leave the hall because Henry's crazy, and first of all, the Barrymores are still there. In the Hound of the Baskervilles, they're like the servants at Baskerville Hall. They're like, hey, we want to go make our own life for ourselves. We're going to go off. And like, open a restaurant or open like an inn or something like that. I guess that just like never happened, and there's still servants at the Baskerville Hall. Whatever. Okay. Then there was like Franklin, who in the original one is like a litigious man. He's always suing people for everything, and he's just like a grumpy old codger or whatever. Like, but he's like helpful in the story still. But he's not the same. His daughter, I feel like she's the only character who's kind of okay-ish in the book. Her name is Laura Lyons, and she's divorced. I don't think her husband had died in The Hound of the Baskervilles, but she was divorced and she was dating Jack Stapleton, who she then realized was actually married and just using her to kill Henry Baskerville, or kill Sir Charles Baskerville, the guy who died before Henry came in the story. And so she's just kind of trying to survive in this, and it's really tragic. And that is like the only character where I was like, yeah, I could actually see her being messed up after learning the man that she loved was actually married and posing his wife off as his sister, and also trying to murder people. So of all the characters, it was like this little side character in The Hound of the Baskervilles that still seemed to be okay in this. So this, yeah, just like the story and all, a giant moth haunting people, not scary. None of the characters seem to act like based on what they would have in the original stories, which I think is like I said, the biggest issue with adaptations or continuations today is like completely changing characters. So don't read it. It wasn't very good. I wasn't enthralled at any point in time. I was mostly bored or annoyed because the characters were dumb, and not a huge fan. I think if this had been a standalone and like not, I mean, like it is a standalone novel, but I think if this had not been a continuation of The Hound of the Baskervilles and this had been its own story about like a family curse or some weird moth showing up and like mythology related or something like that, I think it would have been a lot better. But as a continuation to Hound of the Baskervilles and using characters from that in this, absolutely horrible adaptation of a Sherlock Holmes, or continuation of a Sherlock Holmes. Horrible, literally. So, in my opinion, if you're a huge fan of Sherlock Holmes, don't read The Beast of the Stapletons. It is not a good continuation of The Hound of the Baskervilles at all. That being said, my question today, and we'll go into happy Sherlock Holmes things, are what is your favorite adaptation of Sherlock Holmes? And my favorite on-screen adaptation of Sherlock Holmes is Jeremy Brett and the Granada television series. He just really encapsulated Sherlock Holmes. I feel like he was the right amount of quirky, but really smart, and also like genuine and caring about people when it matters in the stories. And I think he is like the perfect Sherlock Holmes. And they're all free on YouTube. Like you can go just find all these Sherlock Holmes episodes. Just type in like Jeremy Brett, Sherlock Holmes. Go find them. They're free. They're great. They're also just like really good adaptations of the stories as well. And then a modern version that I really like is a podcast called Sherlock & Co. I think it's brilliant. The writing is really good. The way they've adapted the stories into the modern day is also really good. And I just really feel for the characters. I absolutely love them. There have been times where I have literally gasped during the podcast because of something that has happened relating to the characters. And so if you are looking for a modern day adaptation of Sherlock Holmes, I highly suggest Sherlock & Co. Shout out to Sherlock & Co., which will make sense to people who have listened to it, or if you do listen to it, there's always shout outs throughout the episodes. So yes, don't read Sherlock Holmes and the Beast of the Stapletons by James Lovegrove, but do check out Sherlock & Co. and also the Jeremy Brett Granada television series. So yes, comment down below, do you have a favorite Sherlock Holmes adaptation? What do you think about adaptations of Sherlock Holmes in general, or continuations of classic stories? And thank you so much for listening. Please like, subscribe, and like I said, comment down below. And you all have a great day.